Okay, picture this. We're hanging out in a busy university research lab. A PhD student is glued to a glowing laptop screen, and they've got this huge, triumphant smile on their face. They spin around and confidently declare to the room, "My path coefficients, p-values, and r-squared values are perfectly aligned. My analysis is complete." Basically, they've just finished running a super complex structural equation model, and in their mind, the variable-oriented analysis is totally finished. The data has spoken, the net effects are calculated, and hey, the dissertation is practically printing itself, right?
But then, plot twist, their supervisor leans over the desk, squints at the screen, and delivers this Socratic reality check that completely shatters the student's sense of accomplishment. The supervisor just casually asks, "Well, your SEM results show which variables matter on average. But tell me, do all successful cases actually follow that exact same pathway?" The student just freezes. Complete confusion. Because, well, the supervisor is totally right. The model shows an average effect across the entire dataset, but it completely misses the unique, combined recipes that might lead individual, specific cases to success. So let's dive into symmetric versus asymmetric thinking and why researchers combine PLS-SEM and fsQCA. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are tackling a massive paradigm shift happening right now in quantitative research. I'm going to guide you through this whole methodological conflict and show you exactly how integrating these two approaches can completely transform your research.
To really get why the student was so confused, let's look at what they were actually doing. You've probably seen diagrams like this, right? It maps out formative and reflective constructs, and the whole goal is to isolate variables to see their individual strength and significance. PLS-SEM is an absolutely fantastic regression-based method. It's variance-based, and it predicts a dependent variable by looking at the net effects of independent variables. It's all about maximizing explained variance. But as powerful as it is, it kind of forces your brain into a very specific type of thinking.
Which brings us to symmetric versus asymmetric thinking and where the data analyst steps in. This is where the third character in our lab, the data analyst, steps in with a whiteboard marker to rescue our bewildered PhD student. To answer the supervisor's question, the student has to make a fundamental methodological pivot. Look at the left side here. We have PLS-SEM, which is fundamentally symmetric. Symmetric logic assumes that if the presence of a predictor increases an outcome, its absence has to decrease it. It literally asks, how much does one isolated variable affect the outcome on average? But over on the right, we have fsQCA, which is asymmetric. It doesn't care about isolated net effects. It looks at holistic configurations. It asks, what combination of conditions produces this specific outcome? Let's look at the theory of configurational causality, broken down into 3 pillars. To really grasp what fsQCA brings to the table, our analyst breaks down the vocabulary you need to know. We have to step away from linear predictions and enter the world of configurational causality. So pillar number 1 is causal complexity, sometimes called conjunctual causation in the literature. The crucial thing to remember here is that in the real world, outcomes are rarely driven by just a single isolated variable. Instead, they happen because of complex combinations of conditions working together. Think of it like baking a cake. Flour alone doesn't make a cake. Sugar alone doesn't make a cake. It's the exact combination of ingredients, the recipe, that actually creates the outcome. Pillar 2 is equifinality. Honestly, I love this concept. Equifinality just means that there are multiple, entirely different pathways that can produce the exact same outcome. There's almost never just one single route to success. In traditional regression, we are always hunting for that one best fit line. But in configurational thinking, we accept that, hey, case A might succeed using one strategy, while case B succeeds using a completely different but equally valid strategy. And pillar 3 is causal asymmetry. This is a huge shift from standard regression thinking. Causal asymmetry warns us that the ingredients for a high outcome don't necessarily mirror the ingredients for a low one. The causes of success are absolutely not just the reverse of the causes of failure. So having a certain condition might lead to success, but lacking it doesn't automatically guarantee failure, because something else entirely might compensate for it. Moving on to our digital transformation case study for a real-world application. Let's pull this out of abstract theory and ground it in a super relatable research scenario. Let's say we're examining digital transformation and project performance within construction firms. Here's our setup for an fsQCA truth table analysis. We have 6 distinct conditions: digital maturity, leadership support, training support, team communication, ESG pressure, and organizational learning. And our desired outcome? High project performance. Now, if we only ran PLS-SEM on this, we just get an average weight of how much each of these 6 things mattered across all the construction firms, which is helpful, but it doesn't really tell us how these firms actually operate on the ground.
And boom, here's equifinality in action. Through fsQCA, the analyst shows that 3 different firms reach the exact same high performance through completely different causal pathways. Firm A relies on digital maturity, strong leadership, and team communication. Firm B, they don't even have high digital maturity, but they succeed anyway through heavy training, organizational learning, and responding to ESG pressure. Then you have Firm C, using a mix of leadership, digital maturity, and training. All 3 crush it and achieve the outcome. PLS-SEM shows us the average effects of those variables, but fsQCA actually maps out these distinct, alternative causal pathways.
Next up, justifying and refining your method for the dissertation defense.
Back in the lab, the PhD students' eyes go wide. It finally clicks. They realize that by using both methods, they aren't just presenting a flat average, they're presenting a nuanced, highly realistic picture of the data. But, how do you actually defend this hybrid approach to a terrifying dissertation committee? You step up and confidently recite this. This study combines PLS-SEM and fsQCA because the research problem involves both net effects and configurational causality. PLS-SEM tests the strength and significance of hypothesized relationships. fsQCA identifies alternative combinations of conditions that produce the same outcome. That statement brilliantly proves that you grasp both the symmetric and asymmetric paradigms. It's just a masterclass in methodological rigor.
But hey, before you run off to implement this in your own work, listen closely. Our data analyst has some non-negotiable warnings because peer reviewers will absolutely roast you for these basic errors. First, never say fsQCA is better than PLS-SEM. They are complementary, they aren't competing. Second, please don't use fsQCA just because it looks trendy or advanced. Third, you cannot treat configurations as correlations. fsQCA is set theoretic. It evaluates necessary and sufficient subsets, not linear correlation. Fourth, do not ignore your theoretical framework when you're interpreting these pathways. Theory has to dictate the combinations you test. And finally, always remember causal asymmetry. Never ever assume the absence of a condition has the exact opposite effect.
So think about your own research for a second. Are you missing the unique recipes for success by only looking at the averages? It might just be time to bring configurational thinking into your next project so you can uncover the deep, contextual reality of your data. Because ultimately, the perfect hybrid approach comes down to this. PLS-SEM explains how much variables matter. fsQCA explains how variables combine across cases.